Now moving federally, the $1 trillion federal infrastructure plan is headed to the House after passing the U.S. Senate yesterday. The bill aims to provide cash for states to use on everything from rebuilding roads to increasing broadband internet access. And Illinois stands to receive $10 billion just for highways, much to the delight of many engineering and contracting groups. And joining us to hear what this bill does mean for Illinois are Reverend Larry Bullock, President and founder of the U.S. Minority Contractors Association, Kevin Artle, President and CEO of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Illinois, and Joe Sweeterman, a professor at the School of Public Service at DePaul University and a transportation expert. Welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. I want to start by listing out what exactly is in this big infrastructure bill for Illinois. So $10 billion, as we mentioned, for federal highway projects, $1.4 billion for bridges, $4 billion for mass transit, $149 million for electric vehicle charging stations, and $100 million to improve broadband internet access. And there is the opportunity for Illinois to get even more money in the form of grants than what's already here. Kevin Artle, does this meet the bulk of Illinois' infrastructure needs?
Well, this puts us in a great position to finish off the backlog of work that Rebuild Illinois started, but more than that, really modernize our surface transportation network. And I think Senator Duckworth and Senator Durbin did a great job of drafting a bill that really caters and is posited on Illinois' needs.
Joe Sweeterman, $4 billion for mass transit. What does that mean for CTA, PACE, and Metra?
You know, on top of the CARES Act and the stimulus bailout bills, with this, you really see a commitment to transit. That's all good. I think the tough part is we're going to entering a period where transit's going to dramatically have to change to rethink how it delivers its product post-pandemic, work from home. And we hope the bill pushes agencies to think creatively rather than a business as usual approach. But there's a lot to celebrate here.
And Reverend Larry Bullock, what about jobs for contractors and workers that will be needed to rebuild and build some of this infrastructure?
Well, thank you. One of the things that I'm extremely concerned about is that we do have two bills, one of which they say is called hard infrastructure, the other one I prefer to call human infrastructure. So we do have two propositions before us here. And the first proposition, the hard infrastructure, I and my membership are quite concerned about workforce development and how that fits into the Build Back Better, how that fits into Rebuild Illinois, because historically those jobs have not gone to minority, Black and brown communities for obvious reasons, part of which is the union, part of which is a lack of entrepreneurship. So I had an interview with the Washington Post and the Marco Foundation, and I was telling them my main concern is the flow of funds to the state and how public policy will be shaped to ensure that those funds go into legitimate workforce development programs. And they can't always be run out of the government. And I hope my guests would agree with me that we can do more in the private sector than they can in the public sector.
So what you're saying, Reverend Bullock, is workforce development to make sure that there are enough qualified workers, especially in Black and brown communities, to take some of these jobs.
That is absolutely correct.
Kevin Artle, what are the specific projects that are shovel-ready, that are going to get going right away? You mentioned Rebuild Illinois, the state infrastructure package. What are the big ticket items that are ready to go?
Well, one of the challenges is you have to design something before you can build it, and Illinois' lack of funding over the last 20 years has really reduced the design budget. But what you have is options are available right now on the Stevenson Expressway. There's preliminary designs on Eisenhower Expressway. So those two are in a good position to benefit from these projects. Statewide, you're looking at I-270 downstate in Madison County, and rebuilding the bridge over the Mississippi there is in ready position. And more than that, the city, led by Alderman Villegas, and then counties across the state made investments in their own infrastructure programs so they can have better utilization and leverage of federal funds. So Over the last 3 years, Illinois has really put themselves in a great position to leverage the maximum amount out of this infrastructure bill.
As we said, there's some matching funds here. There's some grants that Illinois could get after. Joe Sweeterman, another big need in Chicago especially is replacing lead water service lines, which the mayor has estimated would cost something like $8.5 billion. This bill has $15 billion total for the nation for this project. So will it be able to cover the cost for Chicago's replacement program?
It certainly won't be enough, but I think what we have to say, Chicago stands alone, that we are the worst city in the country in terms of lead pipe, in terms of the scale of the problem. And really, Mayor Emanuel and Mayor Lightfoot have made this priority, but boy, with our budget situation, this is a welcome relief to have federal stimulus money earmarked towards something this specific, particularly in marginalized neighborhoods, South Side, Southeast Side. We just have problems that the city budget can only make a small dent in. We hope this is a down payment on bigger funding, perhaps in a second bill, but it's legitimate public health crisis in this city, and I'm pleased that there's specific funding, which Chicago will get a big piece of this.
And some Chicago homeowners are already eligible to tap into some of that money to replace lead service lines, water service lines, that is. Reverend Larry Bullock, you got into this distinction between hard and soft infrastructure mentioned. So there's this bipartisan infrastructure bill, and then there is a budget bill that's about $3.5 trillion that Democrats have proposed and have acknowledged they would probably have to pass on a party line reconciliation vote. So what is the soft infrastructure that you're talking about?
Well, the soft infrastructure I'm talking about is how you mitigate against inflation. And you mitigate inflation by putting people to work, paying taxes, businesses operating successfully. And so often when we talk about infrastructure, we just look at a big bridge or look at the water system. And certainly I agree with my previous speaker that we need to do something about wastewater treatment and sanitation and so forth. We all know about Flint, Michigan. But I think that greater second bill, the human infrastructure bill, if we can help those persons caring for elderly parents, we can help those people who need proper child care, if we can help people get some of the modicums of decency with prescription eyeglasses and things like that, and dental care, that's infrastructure too, because those people build those bridges. Those people, in fact, provide the sweat and labor to make sure that our economy is functioning. So I'm a big proponent right now on looking at equity disparities in workforce development, but also looking at things such as child care tax credits, caring for the elderly, giving people reasonable leaves from their job to care for an elderly parent or grandparent. That to me is also infrastructure. So I call that human infrastructure. And what we're doing here at U.S. Minority Contractors, we can do two things at once. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. And we're not just going to let the billions of dollars flow through the coffers and the system remain the same. It's got to change.
All right, Kevin Ardle, I want to touch on that issue of workforce development that Reverend Bullock has brought up. You know, everyone has a story of going to a restaurant or going somewhere right now and that establishment can't find enough workers. I mean, there's a worker shortage. Do you worry about that being the case with all of these infrastructure projects that will need workers on?
It's already the case right now in Illinois. The Rebuild program has increased the need for engineers across the state in a dramatic fashion. And ACEC did a study. We expect this infrastructure bill to create 82,000 new jobs in engineering, designing. So yeah, I mean, we need more kids in STEM classes. We need immigration reform at the federal level to allow us to bring in qualified engineers who want to work here. And we need to cultivate more engineers in college right now. So across the board, you know, this is a generational investment in infrastructure, and it's going to require generations to implement it.
All right. Well, lots more to come. As we mentioned, the House still has to pass this bill. We don't know if they're going to do that yet, and then the president will have to sign it. And our thanks for now to Reverend Larry Bullock, Kevin Ardle, and Joe Sweeterman.